The sea has always spoken in whispers, long before mortals learned to listen. Its voice is soft, but it carries the weight of eternity. Legends say every wave remembers, and every tide tells a story. Among these tales, one glimmers brighter than sunlight on water. It is the story of Poseidon, the restless lord of the deep. A god not only of storms and fury, but of silence and reflection. Sailors feared his trident, yet few knew his secret longing. For Poseidon sought not war, but harmony within the endless sea. The ocean was his kingdom, yet even he could not command its heart. That heart was hidden, glowing quietly in the shadows below. They called it the eternal pearl, born at the dawn of creation. A jewel that held the rhythm of tides, the breath of the abyss. It was said the pearl could calm tempests and quiet the flood. But it could not be taken, only understood, only trusted. This is the tale of how Poseidon followed a whispering current, how he journeyed beyond fear, into silence, into mystery, and how he learned that the sea's greatest treasure was not possession, but balance, flowing eternal, like the pearl itself. The world was young, and the sea stretched wider than memory itself. Its horizon was endless, yet its presence touched every shore. The Greeks called it thalassa, the great expanse beyond all measure. And within that expanse lived the power of Poseidon, lord of the sea. He was often remembered for storms, for quakes, for sudden floods. Mortals feared him, prayed to him, and cursed his name in the same breath. But beneath the crashing waves, Poseidon's heart was more than fury. It carried questions, wonder, and a search for meaning unspoken. The god of the sea often wandered in silence across the ocean floor. His palace of coral and pearl gleamed, yet it felt strangely hollow. For what is a kingdom without harmony, even for a god? Poseidon longed not only to rule, but to understand the waters. One evening, as the sun fell into the horizon, he rose from the depths. The surface was calm, painted in gold and violet by the dying light. Sailors whispered songs, unaware their voices reached his ears. They sang of a pearl hidden beyond reach, glowing in eternal tides. The eternal pearl, they called it, a treasure from the dawn of time, said to hold the rhythm of the waves, the pulse of the abyss. Legends spoke that whoever found it would calm the sea forever. But legends never tell the full truth, only fragments shaped by fear. Poseidon listened, though he had heard such whispers before. This time, something stirred within him, a thread of curiosity. He wondered if the pearl was not just treasure, but truth. If it could explain the restlessness he felt in the ocean's heart. The waters shifted softly around him, as though urging him on. Schools of fish shimmered like liquid silver, moving in harmony. The moon rose above, casting a path of light across the sea. In that glow, Poseidon saw a sign he could not ignore. For a god, visions often came like tides, unbidden yet undeniable. In the depths of his mind, he saw a pearl resting in silence. It glowed not with greed, but with a living, breathing light. A voice, faint as a ripple, whispered, "Seek it, or balance will fade." Poseidon did not speak, but his heart thundered like waves. The ocean itself seemed unsettled, as if echoing his vision. Tides moved strangely, flowing against the moon, defying their rhythm. Even the winds stalled, uncertain, waiting for his choice. He descended once more, back to his palace of shining coral. Nymphs greeted him, offering music, laughter, and endless praise. Yet none of it eased the weight pressing against his thoughts. The pearl called to him, though no voice was truly heard. Alone in his throne hall, he placed his hand on the trident. It shimmered faintly, reflecting the unease of its master. Poseidon whispered to the silence, a rare sound of doubt. What harmony does the ocean seek that even I cannot give? No answer came, only the steady hum of the endless tide. But he felt the question linger, stretching out like an unseen current. The eternal pearl was not myth, not mere sailor's dream. It was something alive, a secret waiting beneath the world. So began the stirring of Poseidon's journey, not of conquest, not for dominion, nor for glory sung by mortals on land, but for a deeper truth hidden within the folds of the sea, a truth that even a god must seek with humility and wonder. And as the night deepened, stars reflected like pearls above. The ocean breathed slow, as though keeping its secret close. Poseidon gazed upward, silent, steady, and resolved within. The whispers of the pearl would no longer be ignored. Sailors have always been keepers of secrets, though they never claim the title. Their songs drifted across harbors, woven with half-truths and wonders. In those songs, the name of the eternal pearl often returned like a refrain. It was whispered not as treasure alone, but as something alive and radiant. The pearl, they said, was older than gods, older than the shaping of the seas. Born when the first waters embraced the first breath of the earth, it carried a glow that neither dimmed nor flickered through endless ages. A light not of fire, but of tide, pulsing with the rhythm of the abyss. The fishermen told each other it calmed storms when honored from afar, that its unseen presence kept balance between mortal shore and godly deep. But every sailor knew the tale came with warnings carved in salt. The pearl could not be claimed, only glimpsed, only trusted in silence. Those who tried to take it vanished, their names swallowed by the sea. No shipwreck was ever found, no mast, no sail, no cry. The sea kept its mysteries, and men kept their distance. Yet curiosity clung tighter than fear in the hearts of some. And so stories traveled farther, shaped by each port, each tongue. Some said it lay guarded by nymphs, gentle but unyielding. Others swore a serpent of currents coiled endlessly around it. A few whispered that the pearl itself chose who might see it. Never the same tale, never the same ending, yet always the same glow. Poseidon heard these whispers rise from the mortal world like foam. They reached his ears through prayers, chants, and frightened dreams. He understood them not as superstition, but as signals. The sea does not invent without cause, nor do mortals dream without spark. One night, he swam near a coast where fires burned along the shore. Fishermen told stories to children, their voices heavy with awe. He lingered in the waves unseen, listening to every word. The children asked why the pearl was never brought to temples, why gods themselves did not claim it for their own dominion. The elder only shook his head, voice low like a tide withdrawing. No hand may hold what was meant to flow, he said softly. Poseidon carried those words deep into the ocean with him. They lingered, sharper than prophecy, clearer than prayer. No hand may hold what was meant to flow. Was that not the nature of the sea itself, eternal and untamed? Perhaps the pearl was not a gift to possess, but a reminder that balance must breathe freely, without cage or chain. The thought haunted Poseidon in his halls of coral and pearl. The eternal pearl called him not with sound, but with silence. He felt it between waves, in the pause before each tide returned. He felt it in the unease of currents bending against the moon. The whispers of mortals had become more than rumor to him. They were clues, scattered across time, waiting for one to follow. The god of the sea, master of waves and storms, felt humbled. for even his trident could not command the ocean's hidden heart. He knew the pearl must be sought, not for conquest, but for truth. Thus the legend of sailors became the beginning of his quest. A quest not for glory, but for the quiet balance within the sea. The whisper of the eternal pearl grew stronger, like a tide rising. And Poseidon, restless and resolved, prepared to follow where it led. The sea is never still, even when it seems asleep beneath the stars. Its breath rises and falls, a rhythm older than mountains or sky. But in those days, the rhythm began to falter, quiet yet undeniable. Sailors noticed first, though they lacked words to name what they saw. Tides shifted strangely, rising when the moon was low, falling when it was full. Currents curled against themselves, colliding like thoughts in a restless mind. The ocean spoke in ways no chart, no compass could ever explain. Fishermen whispered of nets tearing without reason, boats drifting off course. At night, harbors trembled as waves lapped higher than their stone walls. Children dreamed of water creeping through windows, soft but endless. Priests in temples watched offerings drift away, refused by the sea. They raised prayers louder, burning incense to calm the god below. Yet still the waters shifted, as if the ocean carried a hidden unease. And always, on the lips of mortals, the same word appeared. Pearl, the eternal pearl, the heart of stories, the jewel of balance unbroken. Some said its light was dimming, its pulse weakening across the abyss. Others claimed it stirred, restless, seeking to be found once more. Each tale carried fear, each tale carried hope, woven together like tides. In the high halls of Olympus, even the gods began to notice. Zeus looked down from storms, Athena listened through the rustle of winds. But none felt the shifting of the sea more deeply than Poseidon. For every restless current pressed against his chest like a question. Every wandering tide spoke in silence, asking for an answer unspoken. He stood upon the cliffs of the deep, watching the ocean's movements. Not as master, but as witness, humbled by forces beyond his will. The pearl's whispers had grown stronger, threading through every wave. No longer rumor, no longer distant legend, but something alive and near. Poseidon closed his eyes, and the world of water opened within. He felt rivers trembling far inland, springs shivering in hidden caves. He felt whales singing notes that did not belong to their kind. He felt silence in places where once there had been chorus. The harmony of the sea was faltering, and he could not ignore it. For the sea was not merely his realm, but his very breath. If it unraveled, so too would his essence, his purpose, his being. And yet he knew this was no enemy to strike with trident, no storm to summon, no quake to silence with thunder. This was a wound of balance, delicate and invisible. It could not be commanded, only sought, only understood. And so Poseidon descended deeper than the deepest trench he had known. Past walls of stone carved by centuries, past gardens of glowing kelp, past shoals of silver fish that fled at his passing, sensing the weight. The sea grew darker, heavier, as though holding its breath in waiting. He reached a place where even currents hesitated, uncertain where to flow. There, he felt the faintest hum, soft as a pearl's glow unseen. It thrummed not in his ears, but in the marrow of his being. A reminder, a warning, a call. The eternal pearl was tied to the sea's unrest, its faltering rhythm. And Poseidon, lord of waves and silence alike, knew what he must do. He would follow the whispers, no matter how deep, no matter how far. For the ocean was calling, and a god must answer. Thus began the stirring of a quest that would change not the sea alone, but the very heart of balance, flowing eternal like the tide. The dream came to Poseidon like a tide rising without warning, silent yet immense. He lay in his coral hall, the sea hushed, the world dim beyond its walls. But his mind was pulled outward, carried by unseen currents through the deep. He drifted past forests of kelp that shimmered as if touched by moonlight, past canyons carved by ancient waters, their silence older than Olympus itself. And then, in the stillness of the abyss, the vision began. A pearl floated alone, its glow soft, pulsing like the beat of a heart. Its light reached outward, threads of silver weaving through the dark. Around it, waters stirred as though alive, drawn to its quiet rhythm. A voice followed, faint as a ripple, but clear as the tide. "Seek me, or the waters will lose their harmony forever." The words echoed inside him, not in sound, but in essence. Poseidon stretched out his hand, yet the pearl remained distant. The currents pulled him closer, then swept him back again. It was not a gift to be taken, but a truth to be understood. The vision dissolved, the light fading into endless shadow. But the echo of the voice lingered like salt upon his lips. When he awoke, the coral hall seemed dimmer, the waters restless. Nymphs danced in the distance, unaware of the silence in their lord. For Poseidon sat still, his gaze fixed on the endless beyond. Dreams, for a god, are not mere fragments of sleep. They are omens, woven with threads of memory, prophecy, and truth. He knew this dream was no illusion, no shadow of thought. It was the ocean itself speaking, the voice of balance calling. He rose from his throne, the trident shimmering in the pale glow. Its prongs reflected his own doubt, a flicker rare for a god. What did the pearl mean? And why did it call now? Had its silence broken because the sea itself had begun to fracture? He walked through gardens of coral, each shell and stone humming faintly. Even the sea creatures seemed unsettled, their movements uncertain. A school of fish scattered without cause, shadows darting in confusion. Poseidon paused, his heart steady yet uneasy, the dream still burning. He remembered the elders' words carried from mortal shores. No hand may hold what was meant to flow. Perhaps the dream was a warning, a test placed before him. For the pearl was not power, but balance, fragile as foam on stone. And balance, once lost, is not easily returned, even by gods. Poseidon closed his eyes once more, listening to the sea's breath. Each current whispered the same truth, though in different voices. The pearl must be found, not taken, not claimed, but seen. He must journey beyond the reach of storms, beyond mortal waters, into trenches where even light refused to linger, silent and eternal. The path would not be marked, no signs carved into stone. Only whispers would guide him, threads of a song older than Olympus. Poseidon felt the call deepen, not a command, but a plea. The ocean was asking, not demanding, and he could not refuse. For if the sea lost its rhythm, so too would its children suffer. And Poseidon, lord of waves, would fail not in wrath, but in silence. He stepped into the open waters, leaving the hall behind. The current stirred as though ready to carry him forward. The vision of the pearl glowed faintly in his mind. Not a jewel to adorn, not a treasure for gods or men, but a light of harmony, fragile, eternal, waiting to be understood. And so, with a dream as compass, Poseidon began to seek, not for conquest, but for truth flowing quiet as the tide. The ocean had spoken, and its lord would answer. Poseidon moved through the waters with a silence unusual for the lord of waves. He left the coral gardens behind, their shimmer fading like a memory. Currents guided him, weaving around his form like unseen threads of fate. Each flow whispered, a chorus of voices urging him onward, deeper. The sea grew darker, the light of the surface dimming above. Fish scattered as he passed, sensing a purpose larger than themselves. Poseidon's trident glowed faintly, casting ripples of silver across the gloom. It was not a weapon now, but a lantern against uncertainty. The dream's echo lingered, the pearl's light still alive in his mind. He wondered if destiny could be carried in silence like a tide. The waters pressed in, colder, thicker, filled with weight of the abyss. Mountains rose below him, ridges carved by forces older than time. Canyons yawned open, their depth stretching into silence without end. The god slowed, listening to the ocean's voice in every current. A hum reached him, soft, vibrating through coral hidden in shadows. It was a song, not of nymph or siren, but of the sea. The melody rose and fell, ancient, fragile, woven into water itself. Poseidon followed, each note a thread pulling him into mystery. As he moved, images stirred in the waters around him. Shapes of whales long gone, their spirits gliding in silence. Traces of storms carved into the sea, memories lingering in salt. The ocean was speaking in ways only its keeper could hear. The song grew clearer, pulsing with the rhythm of the dream. Poseidon closed his eyes, letting the current carry his form. For a moment, he was not a god, but a listener, a guest. He remembered when he first felt the sea's voice as a child. Before thrones, before power, he had been only a boy of tides. The ocean had cradled him then, not demanding, only offering. Now, it offered again, not power, but trust, fragile and deep. The hum led him to a valley, hidden in shadow's embrace. Coral glowed faintly, forming arches like gates to another world. Fish swam in circles, moving as though in ritual, not chance. At the valley's heart lay a stone, smooth, shaped by time. And from it rose bubbles of light, faint, steady, eternal. Poseidon touched the stone, his hand brushing its cool surface. The song swelled, echoing through his chest, a note of welcome. He understood then. The pearl was not a thing to hold. It was a truth seated in the sea, alive in its rhythm. Balance was not an object, but a harmony felt in all things. He felt the oceans, gratitude, soft as the touch of foam, but also its plea, urgent, trembling beneath the surface. Somewhere, the balance had been broken, threads frayed and drifting. The pearl's call was not only guidance, but warning. Poseidon rose from the stone, eyes steady, trident glowing brighter. The journey was not to claim, but to restore, to mend. The sea asked not for dominion, but for care and listening. He drifted upward, leaving the valley, the hum still echoing. Above him, the waters seemed lighter, though the task heavier. The path stretched far, unmarked, yet certain in its direction. Poseidon's heart carried both weight and calm, a tide within him. He whispered into the current, words only the ocean could hear. I will find the pearl, not for myself, but for you. The waters swirled in answer, wrapping around him like a promise. And so he swam deeper into the unknown, guided by silence. The eternal pearl awaited, hidden where the world forgot to look. Not as treasure, but as the song of balance made whole again. The sea grew vast around Poseidon, stretching outward like an endless canvas of silence. He felt the weight of time in its layers, each current carrying an untold story. The path before him was not marked by stars, but by instinct and memory. Every ripple, every shadow seemed to lean closer, guiding him deeper. The dream's pearl glimmered faintly in his thoughts, a lantern for his spirit. Yet questions lingered. Was the pearl truly an object, or only a symbol? The ocean does not reveal quickly. It teaches through patience and silence. Poseidon knew this, yet even he felt the urgency rising within. The waters shifted, growing warmer, touched by currents from far horizons. It was unusual, for these depths seldom welcomed such change. He followed the warmth until it led him into a realm of glowing reefs. Corals rose like towers, painted in colors only darkness could preserve. They pulsed with life, their glow steady as the heartbeat of the sea. Schools of fish drifted in patterns, as if tracing invisible words. Poseidon slowed, sensing meaning woven into the movement of creatures. They circled, twisted, then scattered, leaving the path open ahead. At the edge of the reef stood a cavern mouth, vast and silent. Its entrance shimmered with faint light, not of coral, but something else. Poseidon entered, his trident raised like a torch against the dark. Inside, the cavern walls shimmered with pearls embedded in stone. Not one, but thousands, each glowing faintly in unison. The sight was breathtaking, yet confusing, for none matched the dream. He stepped closer, listening to the faint hum that filled the cavern. Each pearl sang a note, together forming a fragile chorus of light. But the harmony was broken, faltering, as though a voice was missing. Poseidon touched the nearest pearl, and the sound shifted slightly. He felt sadness in its rhythm, a longing hidden beneath its glow. The pearls were not treasures, but guardians, each holding part of the sea's memory. Together, they formed the eternal choir, keepers of balance unbroken. But one voice had gone silent, the one he sought, the eternal pearl. Without it, the choir faltered, and the ocean's song grew fragile. Poseidon withdrew his hand, the hum echoing in his chest. He understood. His quest was not to find one pearl among many. It was to restore the missing voice, to complete the ocean's song. The cavern grew darker, as though the sea itself listened to his resolve. Poseidon spoke softly, words lost to the current, yet heard by the depths. I seek not possession, but harmony, for without it the sea cannot breathe. The pearls shimmered faintly, their light bending toward the cavern's end. There, a narrow passage stretched into blackness, colder than any depth he'd known. Poseidon felt the pull, the unmistakable thread of destiny woven tight. He stepped forward, currents parting around him like veils of silence. Beyond the passage, the ocean waited. Older, quieter, and more demanding. He carried the song of the pearls in his chest, guiding his steps. The ocean had shown him the absence. Now he must seek the answer. Not in conquest, not in claim, but in listening deeper still. And so Poseidon swam onward, into the heart of silence, where truth waited. The passage narrowed, wrapping Poseidon in silence so complete it felt alive. The walls glistened with minerals, veins of crystal pulsing with faint light. Each pulse matched the rhythm of his own heart, slow and deliberate. The ocean was not empty here. It was watchful, waiting, listening. Poseidon pressed onward, his trident glowing dimly, a thread through darkness. Every stroke carried him deeper, where even memory seemed to dissolve. At last, the tunnel widened into a chamber vast beyond measure. Its dome was carved by time itself, a cathedral of the deep. Strange lights flickered, not from coral or pearl, but from currents. They moved like dancers, weaving patterns that formed, dissolved, reformed again. Poseidon floated still, watching the water's story written in motion. The patterns told of balance, cycles, and a harmony once whole. But then, One thread snapped, and the dance faltered, collapsing inward. The water trembled, the lights dimming, the rhythm breaking apart. Poseidon knew then. This place was the memory of the sea, a living archive where silence and light carried truths unspoken. The pearl's absence was carved into this chamber like a wound. Its silence was not emptiness, but a voice cut short. He closed his eyes, listening with more than his ears. Faintly, beneath the silence, a rhythm still lingered, fragile, hidden. It called to him, not in strength, but in persistence. A plea carried not in thunder, but in a whisper of tide. Poseidon followed it, swimming slowly, respectfully, as one entering a shrine. At the chamber's center lay a hollow, carved in stone. It was empty, yet filled with a weight heavier than any pearl. The missing heart of the choir had once rested here. Now the hollow echoed with silence, waiting for return. Poseidon placed his hand upon the stone, feeling its cold truth. The ocean's memory surged through him, visions flowing like water. He saw the pearl cradled once in light, singing with the others. But then it drifted away, carried by a current not of this world. A fracture spread, and the harmony faltered, the sea growing restless. The pearl had not been stolen, it had been called away. By what? He could not yet see, only sense in shadows. Poseidon opened his eyes, the visions fading but the weight remaining. His quest was no longer about seeking a place, but a path. He would need to follow the trail of that strange current, beyond the known seas, into waters uncharted by gods or men. The trident shimmered, its glow shifting to a deeper, steadier hue. It seemed to share his resolve, an oath forged in silence. Poseidon stood tall within the chamber, though no ground lay beneath. He lifted the trident, and the current stirred around him. The lights danced once more, fragile but returning to rhythm. They bent toward a single direction, pointing the way forward. The sea had shown him its wound, and also its path. Poseidon whispered into the stillness, "I will bring the voice home." The chamber answered not with sound, but with calm in the water. He turned and swam into the passage, the glow leading him on. Behind him, the chamber dimmed, keeping its vigil until harmony returned. Ahead, the silence deepened, and the ocean stretched into the unknown. But Poseidon carried its memory, its wound, and its trust. And though the pearl lay far beyond sight, he would not stop. For a sea without its song was a world without breath. And Poseidon, its keeper, would see it whole once more. The passage narrowed, wrapping Poseidon in silence so complete it felt alive. The walls glistened with minerals, veins of crystal pulsing with faint light. Each pulse matched the rhythm of his own heart, slow and deliberate. The ocean was not empty here. It was watchful, waiting, listening. Poseidon pressed onward, his trident glowing dimly, a thread through darkness. Every stroke carried him deeper, where even memory seemed to dissolve. At last, the tunnel widened into a chamber, vast beyond measure. Its dome was carved by time itself, a cathedral of the deep. Strange lights flickered, not from coral or pearl, but from currents. They moved like dancers, weaving patterns that formed, dissolved, reformed again. Poseidon floated still, watching the water's story written in motion. The patterns told of balance, cycles, and a harmony once whole. But then, one thread snapped, and the dance faltered, collapsing inward. The water trembled, the lights dimming, the rhythm breaking apart. Poseidon knew then, this place was the memory of the sea, a living archive where silence and light carried truths unspoken. The pearl's absence was carved into this chamber like a wound. Its silence was not emptiness, but a voice cut short. He closed his eyes, listening with more than his ears. Faintly, beneath the silence, a rhythm still lingered, fragile, hidden. It called to him, not in strength, but in persistence. A plea carried not in thunder, but in a whisper of tide. Poseidon followed it, swimming slowly, respectfully, as one entering a shrine. At the chamber's center lay a hollow carved in stone. It was empty, yet filled with a weight heavier than any pearl. The missing heart of the choir had once rested here. Now the hollow echoed with silence, waiting for return. Poseidon placed his hand upon the stone, feeling its cold truth. The ocean's memory surged through him, visions flowing like water. He saw the pearl cradled once in light, singing with the others. But then it drifted away, carried by a current not of this world. A fracture spread, and the harmony faltered, the sea growing restless. The pearl had not been stolen. It had been called away. By what, he could not yet see, only sense in shadows. Poseidon opened his eyes, the visions fading, but the weight remaining. His quest was no longer about seeking a place, but a path. He would need to follow the trail of that strange current, beyond the known seas, into waters uncharted by gods or men. The trident shimmered, its glow shifting to a deeper, steadier hue. It seemed to share his resolve, an oath forged in silence. Poseidon stood tall within the chamber, though no ground lay beneath. He lifted the trident, and the current stirred around him. The lights danced once more, fragile but returning to rhythm. They bent toward a single direction, pointing the way forward. The sea had shown him its wound, and also its path. Poseidon whispered into the stillness, "I will bring the voice home." The chamber answered not with sound, but with calm in the water. He turned and swam into the passage, the glow leading him on. Behind him, the chamber dimmed, keeping its vigil until harmony returned. Ahead, the silence deepened, and the ocean stretched into the unknown. But Poseidon carried its memory, its wound, and its trust. And though the pearl lay far beyond sight, he would not stop. For a sea without its song was a world without breath. And Poseidon, its keeper, would see it whole once more. The currents carried Poseidon further, winding like threads through an unseen loom. The silence deepened, yet within it beat a faint and steady rhythm. It was not the choir he had heard, but something older, rawer. The sea itself seemed to inhale and exhale, vast and endless. Poseidon followed, guided not by sight, but by resonance in his chest. Each beat echoed through him, pulling him toward a place unmarked. The waters grew colder, sharp with a chill of forgotten depths. Here, even light feared to linger, fading before reaching the floor. The trident glowed faintly, but its light seemed swallowed by the dark. Poseidon pressed onward, his resolve the only flame against the void. At last, a faint shimmer appeared far ahead, trembling like starlight. He drew closer, and the shimmer widened into a vast, abyssal plain. The ground was littered with broken shells, relics of lives long gone. Yet the silence here was not empty. It was weighted, purposeful. A slow current wound across the plain, unlike any other he knew. It did not belong to the sea, yet the sea carried it. Poseidon knelt and touched the current, and visions surged through him. He saw the pearl carried away, drifting beyond the ocean's embrace. Not stolen by hand, but drawn by a force foreign to the waves. A realm where tides did not sing, where silence reigned supreme. The pearl had gone beyond, to a place between sea and void. Poseidon's heart tightened. for even gods seldom tread those waters. Yet he could not turn back, not while the sea was wounded. He rose, trident gleaming with a steadier, stronger glow than before. The abyss stirred, as if answering the resolve carried in his spirit. And then, from the plain, shapes began to rise. They were not creatures of flesh, but forms woven from memory. Shadows of whales, fish, and corals drifted upward in silence. They circled him, their presence neither hostile nor kind, but watchful. Each one bore the mark of the pearl's song, faded and incomplete. Poseidon understood, and they were echoes, guardians of the path between realms. They drifted closer, brushing past him like waves on distant shores. Each touch sent a vibration through his chest, steadying his resolve. The shadows parted, opening a corridor across the abyss. At its end shimmered a veil, thin as mist, yet unyielding. Poseidon swam toward it, the currents bending like threads around him. The veil pulsed faintly, resisting, as though testing his intent. He raised the trident, not in force, but in offering. The glow spread, not to break, but to harmonize with the veil. The barrier trembled, then softened, threads of silence weaving apart. A passage opened, narrow, glimmering with both light and shadow. Poseidon paused, knowing the choice was final, the path irreversible. Beyond lay not sea, not land, but something older than both. Yet the pearl was there, and without it, the ocean would fade. He whispered softly into the current, "Guide me, as you always have." The water swirled, pressing gently against him like a blessing. With steady breath, Poseidon passed through the veil and into silence. The sea fell away behind him, and another realm stretched before. No waves, no currents, only stillness, vast and immeasurable. But faintly, far ahead, a glow pulsed with familiar rhythm. The eternal pearl waited, beyond silence, beyond the reach of time. And Poseidon, keeper of the sea, swam onward into the unknown. Poseidon entered a realm where silence reigned so deep it seemed endless. There was no tide, no song, only stillness vast as eternity. The waters that had always embraced him were gone, leaving weightless void. He floated as if suspended in a dream where even breath was memory. The glow of his trident dimmed, as though reluctant to shine here. Still, it flickered gently, a lone star in a sky without dawn. Before him stretched a horizon not of sea but of shimmering veil. Shapes moved within it, neither solid nor shadow, but woven of silence. They drifted, graceful like threads drawn across a loom of eternity. Poseidon advanced slowly, each movement careful, respectful to the realm's hush. The silence was not absence, but presence, a gaze that weighed on him. Every beat of his heart seemed thunderous against the still void. Yet the rhythm guided him, pulling him onward to a distant glow. He felt the ocean's memory within him, steadying his stride against doubt. Ahead, the shimmer grew clearer, a great expanse like a mirror. It reflected not his form, but the sea itself, restless and longing. Waves rolled across its surface, yet they made no sound at all. Poseidon approached, and the trident hummed faintly in recognition of truth. This was the boundary, the very edge where sea met silence. And within the mirror's heart, he saw it, the eternal pearl. It pulsed softly, its glow steady, yet wrapped in strands of stillness. Like chains woven from absence, they held it beyond the ocean's reach. Poseidon reached out, but the mirror trembled, rejecting his touch outright. The silence surged, pressing against him like a tide without water. It tested him, demanding not strength, but understanding deeper than power. Poseidon closed his eyes, listening not with ears, but with spirit. He remembered the chamber's whisper, the ocean's wound, the plea of tides. The pearl had not been stolen. It had been called to silence. Not by force, but by longing, a yearning for balance forgotten. The ocean sang, but silence too was part of creation's song. To restore the pearl, he would need harmony, not conquest. Poseidon lowered his trident, bowing his head in quiet respect. The silence stirred, no longer pressing, but folding gently around him. It carried questions wordless, yet clear. Do you claim, or do you share? Poseidon whispered into the stillness. The sea is my heart, but silence is its breath. At his words, the trident glowed brighter, harmonizing with the hush. The mirror softened, its surface rippling like water touched by wind. The pearl's light flared, no longer bound, but waiting for invitation. Poseidon stretched forth his hand again, not to seize, but to welcome. The strands of silence unwound, fading into threads that wrapped around him. They did not restrain, but embraced, as if weaving him into balance. The pearl drifted forward, its glow brushing against his palm gently. Warmth spread. Through him, the rhythm of the sea and silence entwined. Visions surged, tides flowing, storms rising, stillness returning, balance restored. The eternal pearl had always belonged to both silence and sea. Only together could the song be whole, eternal as the ocean's breath. Poseidon held it, not as possession, but as promise renewed. The silence bowed away, the mirror dissolving into endless calm. And beyond, he felt the ocean stir, waves awaiting their song again. He turned, carrying the pearl close, guided by its steady pulse. The path back opened, glowing with threads of water and stillness woven. Poseidon swam onward, not with haste, but with reverence and stride. Behind him, the realm of silence faded, yet its gift remained within. Ahead lay the sea, awaiting the return of its missing voice. And Poseidon, keeper of tides, bore both silence and song in hand. Poseidon emerged from the veil, the sea rushing to embrace him once more. The familiar currents curled around his form, singing softly in recognition. He held the eternal pearl close, its glow steady, its rhythm alive. The ocean stirred, waves trembling as though sensing the return of balance. He rose through the depths, each motion carrying both silence and song. Creatures gathered as he passed, drawn by a call older than memory. Schools of fish shimmered, whales drifted near, corals swayed in quiet awe. They felt the pearl's presence, the heartbeat that bound sea to silence. Poseidon reached the great chamber where the choir once had faltered. The hollow in stone still waited, an emptiness carved by loss. With care, he placed the pearl back upon its resting place. At once, the silence broke, not with noise, but with harmony. The choir of pearls awakened, voices intertwining like tides in motion. Lights spread across the chamber, flowing through walls and veins of crystal. Every note sang not only of water, but of stillness embraced. The ocean's wound began to heal, its rhythm steady, whole again. Poseidon felt the sea breathe, deep and free, as it always should. The creatures around him swam in circles, their forms radiant with joy. Even the smallest shells hummed faintly, resonating with the restored song. Poseidon bowed his head, not as god, but as keeper in service. For he knew the pearl was never his to own, but to guard. The sea and silence had chosen him to restore their balance, and in return, they offered him trust deeper than eternity itself. He rose from the chamber, the choir's voices following like a tide. The trident glowed softly, not with power, but with harmony's blessing. Poseidon returned to the open waters, where horizon met endless blue. The sun broke the surface above, golden light piercing through waves. It touched his form, and for a moment, sea and sky were one. The world above would never know how close it came to silence. But the ocean would remember, carrying the story in every ripple. Its song now held both sound and stillness, woven into one truth. Poseidon listened, a faint smile stirring as waves danced around him. He had ventured into silence and returned with more than a pearl. He had returned with understanding. Creation needs both voice and pause. The eternal pearl shimmered from within the chamber, its glow unyielding. Its light reached far, guiding lost travelers, blessing tides and storms alike. For ages to come, the sea would sing of its keeper's journey. Not of conquest, but of devotion, patience, and respect for balance. Poseidon swam upward, breaking the surface in a surge of foam. The sky opened wide above him, clouds parting like welcoming arms. He gazed across the horizon, endless, unbroken, alive with promise. The wind carried whispers, faint but true, echoing the ocean's rebirth. Keeper of tides, bearer of silence, guardian of the pearl eternal. The words brushed him like a blessing, carried not by voice, but presence. Poseidon raised the trident high, its light flashing beneath the sky. The sea answered, waves rising and falling in rhythm with his heart. Balance was restored, yet the journey had left a mark upon him. For silence still lingered within, not as absence, but as strength. And whenever storms gathered, he would remember the realm beyond waves. He would guide the seas not with force, but with harmony's hand. Poseidon descended once more, returning to his realm, eternal as the tide. Behind him, the ocean sang anew, its voice whole, unbroken, eternal. The song of the sea carried forward, a gift for all who listened. And deep within its heart, the eternal pearl glowed with everlasting light.